Hello everyone, welcome back. So in this video let's do a golden coin. So I'm starting off with a base sketch. It doesn't need to be perfect, just have a rough idea of how you want the coin to look like. And just do the sketch however you want, because we're not going to keep the sketch. It's just there to have an idea. So on a new layer I'm making a perfect circle, and I'm using the symmetry tool to actually make the crown. In this case it's just a bit easier to work on a flat surface, so like you're looking at the coin from the front, and afterwards just merge the layers and just place it in perspective. So just make sure this layer is well defined, as we're going to use it for the rest of the illustration. So now using the transform tool I'm actually going to place this layer similar to what we had as the sketch, and I'm duplicating it, changing the color to a darker tone, and just place it underneath. This way it's going to be easier to have a perfect coin. After that just zoom in and correct lines that are I guess not connecting. You can also play around with I guess the thickness of the coin, and if you want it to be a bit thinner or a bit thicker, I guess. Just spend as much time as you need at this phase, because we're actually just going to clip different layers on top of this base layer, so it's important that you're happy with the look and the outcome. Now, there are other ways to approach this coin. You can actually just draw it by hand, but for me this technique is actually the fastest way to go about it. However, each and every one is different, so just do what feels comfortable to you. Okay, so on a new layer I added a few airbrush colors, and I'm duplicating that layer on each and every layer I already have for the coin, and just edit the colors and continue using the airbrush. I just wanted to have a base look, and afterwards I can go ahead and make more details. I also selected each and every layer and duplicate them into one single layer, just so I can play around with the color balance, since I wanted to be more golden and it wasn't in the previous stage. So merging everything up and just playing around with color balance actually helped me. After that I just remembered the settings I did in the color balance, and just go ahead on each and every layer and just adjust them, and afterwards deleted that merged layer. I also added a new folder and made the background a bit more darker, and here I'm just playing around with a few different gradients. Okay, so at this stage we're kinda ready to add more details. We already have the base. I've also duplicated the coin and made it into a lighter color, so I can just add a blur effect underneath it. I think this would help with the atmospheric look, but you can also do this at the end if you want to. I sometimes work around on different layers and zones, so this way the drawing actually is going to come together nicely with all the elements. I've also used some dots and added a bit of an airbrush underneath them. Okay, so at this stage pick any brush that you want. I actually went around and tested a few of them. I'm actually not comfortable with each and every brush, so it's a bit difficult for me to make I guess painterly look. However, once you're happy with one of the brushes, just again try and be comfortable with it. You can just go around and on each and every layer just start adding more details. So I think I just ended up using this wet wash type of brush. Again, since I want to make it look like gold, I don't want it to be extra shiny, but I don't want it to be extra worked out as well. And once I'm happy with it, I merge everything, duplicate it and merge it into one layer. I also keep what I have on a different folder, because I'm going to go back and forth and select each layer so I can work on them individually. This way it's just going to be easier to just select the layer with the shape you want to work on. There's no need to use the lasso tool and start reselecting everything. So I'm using a screen for the highlights and the multiply layer for the shadows, and just continue adding a bit more details. Okay, so at this point I want to add a bit more details to the edge. So I'm duplicating the shapes I already had previously and just duplicate, select, deselect and erase parts of it. This way I have a nice sharp edge. And I do this with each and every object that I want it to have a bit of a softer outline. It might look a bit complicated, but it's really not. It's just being very careful of what you select and deselect and what you erase and whatnot. I'm also keeping all of these edges on a different layer so that I can go back to them and just add more colors if I want to. And once I'm happy with that, I just go back to the, I guess, work in progress folder and just reselect the zones I want to work on. And then go back on my main layer and just continue adding more details within the selection space. And also from time to time just pay attention to the navigation tool as well, because if it's tiny and it's readable, it's okay, you're on the right path. I think at this point I decided to give up on the watercolor brush and just use the Gpen on lower opacity. Truthfully, I'm just very comfortable with this default brush, so for me it's just easier to use it on a lower opacity. And from time to time I go ahead and just add a bit of airbrush for a glowy effect. And as we did previously, just go back to your work in progress folder where you have all the layers on different, where you have all the shapes on different layers, and just select each shape you want to work on and go back to your main canvas and just work on it. I just realized I haven't used any line art, but if you try this technique out and you want to have line art going, then you can just go to your main shapes on each and every layer and just add a border effect on them, and that way you have a very sharp line art. Or you can just go ahead and just redraw the line art on a different layer, but that might be a bit time consuming. So I think we're almost done. I'm just again going back on the layers, selecting on what part I want to work on, and just go back to my main layer and just add more details to it. Also, you can keep in mind what type of illustration or the purpose of the illustration you want it to be. I just wanted to make it like a game object. So in this case, for me it was fine to just work on one layer. However, if I wanted to animate this one, maybe I would have just kept all the layers separately. And that way it might be easier to animate and maybe just rotate it just a bit. And at this point you can spend as much time as you want detailing. Since we've already done the hard part, we have the base, we have the colors, we have everything we need. This is just part of the rendering. And when I'm happy with it, I believe I am going to merge everything again and just test out some multiply layer and overlay layer to add a bit more shadows and a bit more highlights. This is just an extra step, but it can help with making the colors pop. I'm also adding extra glow in different colors, and I picked up my trusty default round brush and just started adding more details to the coin, so it would look a bit more, I guess, worn out. But you can also keep it very shiny if you want to. Now, since I was a bit unsure, I just made some rough zones where I want them to be, and if I'm happy with how it looks, I'm actually going ahead and just detail them just a bit more. Sometimes it's better to just jump around and test things out before actually getting into the rendering part. And again, you can spend as much time as you want on this part. I will also make a new layer with a default on color multiply mode. Well, I think it's just color mode, so I can check the grayscale and see if the tones are in the right place and if it has enough contrast. I'm also playing around with color balance and adjusting them just a little, and adding a bit of an airbrush and a bit of shadows in places that maybe I feel they need a bit more work. But we're almost done. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.